This is Richard Bakewell, and you're watching Chris Gordon Hellblazer Biz.
Everyone, as you have heard, I am here with the director Richard Bakewell to talk about his latest film, Roswell Delirium, which I have seen and I actually really enjoyed it. It's got a very poignant theme running throughout and quite a hard-hitting storyline as well, Richard, to be fair. So, you know, when everything, I'm not doing any spoilers, but when it hits you, it hits quite hard because it's hard to explain without giving a spoiler, but the content and the story of trauma. I think you explained it yourself on an article I've seen where it brings out trauma and childhood trauma and how people deal with things like that as well. And it's very cleverly done throughout the entire film, and it peaks right at the end.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's like one where you have to watch all the way through because there's a lot of hints along the way, and if you miss one, you might not realize what's happening until the very end. So
Exactly, and you know, as I say, that you can see it. There's again, it's hard to do one of these interviews, and I don't want to spoil the film for people who haven't seen it yet. But you know, you do get this the theme and the general gist, and but the way you've actually, you know, there's questions here directly. I'm kind of going off my tangent again, but the way you've created the film and the vision for the film, like you say, you've put little drop hints all the way through. It's so cleverly done because it makes you think. Like I said to you just before, I was busy writing notes because I was thinking, and I was
Right.
like, I was trying to work out where things were coming from. And ultimately missed it the first time round. That's what I ended up doing it the second time round because I was too busy trying to work it out in my head and got it. But it's very cleverly done and very well acted as well. You know, you've got a great cast in there as well from, you know, some newcomers along there, which are great, and it's really nice to see that everything came together like that.
Yeah, that was always the worry I had in the beginning was here I have all these iconic actors and then all these up and comer actors, and then but I think they all acted together beautifully and like there was no one who was any weaker. I think everybody helped elevate each other to be better. So I think that was the great thing about the cast is they all acted better because they knew their co-star was this much better, so they were always trying to like elevate themselves.
Definitely. I mean, Kylie did a fantastic job as well. The emotion that, you know, it's like playing Mayday. Excuse me. She was the emotion that she could portray from her character was great. And obviously, you know, like you say, with Ashton and everyone else in there, and then there's more well-known people, Sam Jones and Anthony Michael Hall as well. You know, it's just a lovely cast that comes together like that. It's just and it, like you say, I think they feed off each other. I spoke to a while back a lady called Erin Elizabeth Burns, and she's very independent, but she managed to land a film with Samuel Jackson called Cell. I'm not sure if you'd seen it,
Yep.
but and she explained the dynamics of obviously like when you've got Anthony Michael Hall, you've got Sam Jones, who are more established, the way they could just feed and work, and everyone worked together as a really solid unit and fed off each other. Because everyone's got something really good to bring to the table, no matter where you are. So, you know, coming into a film and having this, it's just, I'm babbling. I apologize.
No,
It's just really, really good.
That is the hardest part as a director is like when a lot of times when you're doing something like this, you don't have Nicole Kidman, Naomi Watts, you don't have a De Niro, so you rely on people who fit into your budget and into your world, and then you're always worried, okay, are they going to perform when the camera's on them? Because some people just they don't step up, they kind of crash and they're scared because all the cameras and the eyes are on them, but there wasn't one person, one actor or actress who crumbled. I mean, if anything, it was like I had to like cut out stuff that was in the script because I'm like, it's too long now because they were all so good. I'm like, wow, I wish I had more. I always said I wish I had more scenes with Kylie, Caden, and Georgia because they were so good together. Like the chemistry they had. Is that the humorous side of the '80s, but like they were just so brilliant together, and I'm like, I couldn't have asked for a better cast.
Definitely. I mean, you say the humorous side of the '80s, but it was because the Kylie's main character keeps dropping in all these little phrases,
right,
from films. I mean, I'm a child. I was born in the '70s, so I was a child of the '80s. So I was like, it was nostalgic because all the little, I've got a bad feeling here, and I was picking up from Star Wars, things like that.
Oh
which is
yeah, you know,
brilliant.
like that was the whole point, is like when I wrote it, it wasn't an 80s movie at first, and then it was like, okay, now I feel like we can make this an 80s movie, and then I'm gonna stick in Easter eggs, and if people really pay attention, the third shot of the movie on the ham radio says 8675309, which is an 80s song called Jenny Jenny, Who Can I Turn To? You know, so it's like
Right.
there's the Easter eggs all along the way. There's Star Wars, there's a couple Star Wars references in there, you know, Airplane, Top Gun, you name it. But like, I wanted to all
Yeah.
feel like real dialogue, because, you know, back when I was a kid, people used movie quotes and song lyrics as part of the
Hmm.
conversation because it was so catchy, you know, and it just became part of your everyday life.
Definitely, the Top Gun ones as well. I picked up on. I remember saying them when I was a kid. You know, like you say, it's just that's how things were. Like,
Yeah.
whereas, you know, the life could be a dream, and you know, she's going shaboom. You see, it's perfect. It's just absolutely perfect.
Thank
So
you.
regarding so with the casting again, just the question regarding the casting, how did that process unfold? What were you looking for in your lead actors?
Well, you know, I tell you, it was the hardest part of the movie was casting, because we're in, you know, kind of like the end of the pandemic, you know, 2022. And I couldn't get a casting director out of the house. They wanted to do it all on Zoom. And I'm like, absolutely not. I have to do it in person. I need to be
Hmm.
there to see all the, you know, the actors and adjust them and work with them. I can't really feel chemistry and screen presence on a video call. I'm not, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Sorry. And so I brought in Kylee and Ari and Glenn and Larissa to kind of help with the casting, who are producers on the movie. And, you
Hmm.
know, I had Ari and Kylee already as the leads. You know, they were always going to be the lead too. I mean, I wrote the film for them both, never knowing how big the film would get. And then, you know, Ashton came in as a wild card, and we were going to put someone more famous in that role. You know, we were
Hmm.
kind of looking at other people, but then she came in and delivered such a powerful performance that when she left, everybody in the room goes, "Go out there and stop her and tell her she's got the role." I'm like, absolutely not. I got to make her wait a couple days, because
Yeah.
I got to figure out what I'm going to do now, because I
Hmm.
plan on having somebody else play that role, but now she just killed it. So I'm like, I can't give it to anyone else. And then, you know, so that became the way we started to maneuver. And then, you know, we luckily, like in the first day of casting, we cast Caden and Georgia and Sage and Tori and Connor. And then the second one, we know we cast Ashton and
Hmm.
Roman and MG, and we just got so many talented people. You know, all the up and comer child actors. You know, and I definitely couldn't have done it if the parents weren't trusting of me. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure they all looked me up and who I was and who's this crazy guy doing in-person audition, because nobody was doing that. And then,
Hmm.
you know, as we're casting these other smaller roles, we're looking at all these 80s people for bigger roles, and that took some time. And, you know, as I say, sometimes in Hollywood you have to like put the mirrors up and let it smoke a little bit, because you have to lie a little bit to get people to sign on to your movie. And, you know, you
Yeah.
kind of have to like trick them a little bit and say, "Oh, I have so and so attached," even though when you don't, you know, you have to like kind of work them a little bit, because nobody wants to be the first to sign on to a movie where they don't know the director or anybody else.
Right.
So, but once we got Sam Jones, you know, everybody kind of fell into place. We got Dee Wallace, Lisa Whelchel, Reggie Johnson, and then we got Michael at the end, you know. And um, I really, uh, I tell everybody, I really feel that like Michael signed on to the movie because he saw Ashton's performance, and
Hmm.
you know they worked together like three out of like three and a half scenes, and you know I think sci-fi scares people sometimes, but when he saw her act, he knew that this was not going to be a campy movie. He knew we were very serious, and
Yeah.
I think that really sold him, because sci-fi sometimes when you say that word, people are like, "Oh my god, it's going to be a horrible like movie, and it's going to
Yeah.
be straight to video, and it's going to be horribly acted." But like, I think people saw her like Michael and just said, "Hey, I see what you want to do. I know that you have a vision, and it's not this campy movie. It's a very thoughtful,
Hmm.
humorous, Easter egg, nostalgic, emotional roller coaster movie." So
Brilliant, fantastic. Their scenes are very good. You know, between the two of them, they really work so well together, uh, and they're very powerful. You know, I'd say that's part of the whole ethos of where you're gluing the film together is those scenes, and it, yeah, Ashton's just superb. She really was in that. It's fantastic. So, what was the initial spark or idea that led to the creation of the film?
Well, there it's kind of twofold. One was I did a documentary years ago about kids doing their bucket list, and
Hmm.
one kid had cancer 9 times, and unfortunately, he basically collapsed in the snow when his mom and him went like skiing, and she told him in the hospital, if you want to go, you can go. And I thought that was so powerful for mom to be that brave, knowing her child is actually dying now, because she thought he was never going to die. He kept beating cancer. And I was like, wow, she did everything she could. The doctors couldn't save him. No one could save him. And when she gave him permission to go, he went. And I thought, wow, what if, you know, there's a place where you could bring a sick one, a loved one who was dying, and bring them to the aliens to save them.
Hmm.
This was a crazy idea I had because I'm like, well, she did everything for Justin, but it wasn't enough. But what if there's the aliens could save him? So that was kind of like a conceptual thing I just thought about. And then
Hmm.
I did a lot of research, and for me, when I'm writing, I really have to dig into my own life and to my own trauma, things that I've experienced. The movie is like a metaphor for mental illness, and I have been with some people who were mentally ill, and uh, they weren't that like really that severe in the beginning, but then things happened where they had mental breaks, and it was having to go into psych wards to see them, and see a different side of them, and so really like those two worlds kind of combined in the script, and then I just really kind of dove into my own life and basically kind of wrote a story that I already survived to live through, more or less.
Hmm.
So,
All right, because so there's a lot of personal stuff in the film there as well. I mean, it touches a nerve because I've had similar experiences with family members and stuff who've ended up in that situation, and it is very hard for everybody. I mean, obviously for those going through it, but when you're a relative or a friend, and you do go and you can see the deterioration every time you visit. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength.
oh no, it does, and it's hard to watch somebody decay, and I remember there was someone I was with years ago, and her best friend once said, "I don't think we'll ever see her again. I think that person's gone," and
Mm,
sadly that was true. Mental illness is something like once you have that first break, it just keeps happening and gets worse and worse over time, and there's really no way to stop it,
yeah.
unfortunately. So and it's hard to try to like live your life, and then it's like you really care about the people that you are that you're with and care for, and sadly it's like you can only do so much, and then it's like at some point you have to kind of step away, I think, from people even though they need you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And again, it's that inner strength to do that, which is what's needed. And again, portrayed in the film, it's a powerful message, and that's one of the things that say really hits you within Roswell Delirium. There, you talking about using your own life experiences as well, but you've also used world experiences, because that's something else which I thought, like you say, with all your Easter eggs and the clever,
Right.
you've related it. Now, I picked up, obviously, this thing's back from the 80s, the Challenger, which I remember seeing well, I wasn't in school because it was early morning US time. So by my time in the UK,
Sure.
I was at home in the evening watching it. But that was a massive, obviously, part of being a sci-fi and being Roswell centered around there. It was fantastic. But I wanted to mention, because I picked up, because obviously there's been the nuclear blasts and things, but I was drawing up the parallels with COVID quite a lot. And I could see that because obviously they were talking about the lockdowns and the wearing of masks and thing, quite the way throughout. And that's one of the things I was writing. I was like, actually, even though it's set in the 80s, I was still thinking you've managed to draw in current events that people relate to, and they'll be able to put that in, which I've obviously done, and put that into the
Sure.
context of when you're watching the film as well.
Yeah, no, I wrote it as a short film in 2019, and then we were gonna film it as an 8-page script called the Roswell Syndrome. That's what it was called. It was like four
Hmm.
scenes. That was it. And I had gone scouting in Riverside to find a hospital in a desert, and I locked all the locations down. And then March happened of 2020, and then everything just stopped. We couldn't film. I mean, we could have, but the hospital said they're no longer going to allow us to film because they needed to keep the beds ready for people who are coming in.
Right.
So I just then decided, well, I'm gonna make it into a feature. And when I was writing it, sure I was writing in my off time, but I'm also living this experience where, you have to wear a mask. Even if you're
Hmm.
running outside trying to stay healthy and keep in shape, people are in their cars yelling at you and screaming at you to go back in your house. And you just want to
Yeah.
like stay healthy. And it's like, I'm not hurting anybody. I just want to, exercise and keep
Hmm.
up my strength. And, I've seen a lot of that and all these kind of like back and forth and just, really like friendships kind of like derailed because some people went over the edge with some of the things, and their beliefs. And, like for us in California, where I live, you had to wait in line sometimes an hour to go in the store and get groceries.
Yeah.
And there was no guarantee that there was going to be anything in there for you. Like I remember like trying to find eggs, and that was like impossible. Like it took me 2 weeks to find eggs at one point, and then you can only buy two at a time. And so like I
Yeah.
really kind of drew those parallels of COVID because it's like something I think people can relate to. Like I know
Hmm.
there are movies that have been released where they kind of spend the era in COVID and they don't do very well. But I was like, well, I don't want to preach. I don't want to like make you feel like you're in COVID again because people don't want to be reminded of that terrible time. They know it
Yeah.
happened. They don't want to think about it. But like I feel like, well, in this movie, I kind of make a couple reference jokes. Like Caden is in school and talks about having to have plastic on the windows, wear masks, and couldn't get toilet paper, and that was kind of a joke, because people of all things to buy in bulk and sell out toilet paper.
Toilet
It's like,
paper.
it's like there are other ways to use the bathroom. There's paper towels, there's washcloths, there's other stuff, but people just went crazy for toilet paper. And I thought that was just the most humorous thing. And people for a year bought me toilet paper as a gift. So even after the supplies were restocked, I still got
Yeah.
toilet paper for a year. So,
That's one of the things I laughed at because we had it in the UK, but I think the US it really hit the US for the toilet paper side of things because you'd see all these
oh,
people
yeah.
coming out with their carts filled, the cars and trucks filled, and it was like, why? Seriously,
Yep.
why are you? What are you eating that demands that much toilet paper?
I know. I'm like, there's other ways. You could just buy a bidet and save the day. People are really so obsessed with toilet paper, and I thought that was just the biggest joke of the whole pandemic.
It was definitely, and I say that the way you've brought that into the film as well, and made it in the context of obviously the nuclear blasts going around, because touch wood, thankfully, no one's experienced that. Well, they have in World War II, obviously,
Right.
in Japan, but no one since has experienced that. And I also thought the parallels are quite. I'm not going to get into politics, but there were some quite parallels, obviously, with the Soviet, because it was back in the 80s. It was very much the Cold War, and it kind of feels, without going into it, that that's where we are again now. So it is a very current sort of
Oh
feeling
no, and
about it,
it's
even though
fun.
it's.
It's funny when I wrote the script, I kind of like made an alternate '80s world, and I
Mhm.
based the script kind of like on the idea that what if the Soviet Union had really sent nuclear warheads to the U.S. because and I Lisa Whelchel that plays a teacher in the school scenes,
Yeah.
and she talks to the kids about the Able Archer 83 drill, which is a real drill where they evacuated the president, did a full on like almost a precautionary evacuation to see how that would
Right.
work and shape up. And that almost set off a attack by the Soviet Union because they thought the U.S. was going to attack them first, and they were getting out of here. So I mean, it really. So when I wrote that, it's like,
Hmm.
oh, here's these things are really kind of like playing a part, and then they were seeing it with
Yeah.
the Ukraine, and I was like, well, I don't know how I was always scared of the Russians invading us and nuclear weapons. But I'm like, well, they can't even beat, Ukraine. So I'm like, maybe we're okay. But, it's like there's still that possibility. They still got the warhead, so anything can happen. But, I really tried to like write it as like, well, what if this could happen? And if that did
Hmm.
happen, the Cold War would not exist. It would have been the hot war. And that, who knows what would have
Yeah.
been left of
Exactly.
the U.S. I mean, it'd probably been only like some small desert cities more or less.
Probably, yeah. Same with the UK as well, because I think we've got more
Yeah.
stored over here.
Oh yes.
The US has shifted them all in the UK.
Uh huh.
but you're right. I mean, I've had the same feeling as well, by the way, about seeing when you see the news and things, and you think, they might have the strength and everything like that, but then the Ukrainians, bless them, they've really held out, and 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 it's amazing the strength of, again, what, when you didn't go into politics, of looking after your own home and everything like
Right. And,
that.
and that's the thing too, like, because I come, when I was younger, my 20s, I used to box, as an amateur boxer for a couple of
Hmm.
years. And, so I follow boxing all the time. It's my favorite sports. And to see like the Ukrainian boxers give up their profession and go over there to help their country, it was like, that's a hero. Whether you live or die, whether you pull a gun and you shoot other people, or whether you just help other people, that's a hero. And like, I don't think those people get credit enough. They give up everything, risking
Yeah.
their life for their people.
Yeah,
Pretty
one of them's a
powerful.
mayor of one of the towns, isn't he? Is it mayor of Kyiv? He is? I can't remember.
I think so. Yeah,
Is it the
something like
Krichkow
that.
brothers?
I think
Is
so.
it the
Yeah,
Klitschko? Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, but I know what you mean.
Klitschko.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Klitschko. Yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
Klitschko. That's it. Yeah,
Klitschko. Yeah.
but yeah, it's amazing. Like you say, the dedication, the feeling of protection on that one as well. It's kind of diversing away from the film. Sorry, but
No,
but
no,
it's
no.
kind of bringing us.
But that is part of the film too. The Soviet
Well, yeah,
Union. Yeah, it's all part of the film.
it is, because again, that's the kind of thing I feel is happening. That's someone over there wants that Soviet Union back again, and that's quite plainly obvious. And so we've gone back. I was gonna, oh my god, it's 40 years, isn't it? In the 1980s.
Yeah, about
Oh
40
my god,
years.
I keep forgetting that. 40 years. I'm so old.
No, 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 you're not. No, it's funny. Like one of the one of the last shots we ever did was a shot of the Soviet Union flag blowing in the wind. And we did that way up in Canoga Park, and it was funny
Mm,
when we did that shot because all these cars were driving by, and they were
right.
seeing this like Soviet Union flag blowing in the wind, and camera filming. And people would stop and slow down and almost cause accidents because they were like, "What the heck is happening? Are they
We've been.
invading now? Are they invading the U.S.?" Because it was
Yeah.
during the Ukraine time. So I'm like,
Right.
people were really scared when they saw that flag blowing in the wind. It's kind of funny. I'm like, let's get these shots and get out of here, because
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
people start getting
Before.
worried and bringing guns.
Yeah, very true. I suppose, yeah, especially out there, it could turn very nasty very quickly.
Yes.
Can you share a moment of the film on set, a moment on set that encapsulates the overall experience of making the film? Is it possible to just name one, or?
Well, like I tell you, I really, I mean, I have a lot of moments, but like I really, and I enjoyed every moment I had with the child actors the most. And it's hard.
Hmm.
I hate saying child actors because they're teenagers and they're like mini adults. They're so smart, and I've hung out with them all a lot. And
Yeah.
like they're my favorite stuff is the humor, because there's not a lot of humor in the film, but it's just kind of sprinkled in there to give you a breath every now and then. And
Hmm.
one of my favorite actors in the film is Roman Smith, who plays Jeremiah. And this kid, he came into the audition, he was 10 years old, and he killed it. And I said to him, hey, look, you live in Oregon, I don't know that you can come here and do the movie because we're not going to shoot in sequence, you're going to have to stay in a hotel for a week. And
Yeah.
we're only hiring LA people, we're not putting up people in hotels. And he goes, don't
Hmm.
worry about it, I'll be there. If I get cast, I'll be there. And I was like, he's 10 years old and so smart. So when we did the ham radio scenes in the garage, the very hot days, it was like August, and it was like 100 degrees. So everyone's dying and sweating, and
Yeah.
this melting. And I just loved, the professionalism of him and Kylie together in this hot garage. And also, it's like the kid has to like swear in the movie, and he hates to swear.
Hmm.
He hates saying any cuss words. He says a couple of them. And I just really enjoyed like teasing him, getting him to say a word a certain way, because then,
Yeah.
he just would laugh and get all embarrassed, and his cheeks got all red. And then it's like that helped us bond, director and actor, and I got better takes out of him because of that, and that's what I kind of do with a lot of these actors is I joke around with them a little bit once I know I have the scene locked in place, and
Hmm.
we're good, and I'll just take a moment and I'll mess with them. I mess with Dee Wallace too at the very end, and it's like that's just how I am, and I feel like you get a better performance out of these actors when you kind of joke with them a little bit and put them at ease. And I just really enjoyed like the times in the garage, all those ham radio scenes. They were difficult because there's so much happening, and the continuity
Yeah.
with the buttons and everything. But just the joy, like when it works, and he helped make those scenes work and brought them to life, and it's just, I mean, some of my favorite stuff that we did, even though it's very simple, but
Hmm.
it's simple sometimes is the most difficult.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The rubber duck springs to mind, was it? That's it.
Yeah, Rubber Ducky,
Little
and
ducky, yeah,
that was,
rubber ducky.
I think that was like an '80s uh, SNL skit or something, because I kept hearing in my head, and I remembered something of Rubber Ducky, you're the one. I don't know where that was from. Might have been Muppets or something, but like, so I put that in the script. I don't know where I remember that from, but it's somewhere in my memory. I
Hmm.
don't know why.
I think I can probably. I don't know if it's true. If it is, but it's Blazing Saddles. Hedy
You might
Lamarr.
be
He's in the
right.
bath and he's got the little duck in the bath and he's going little ducky and he's talking to the duck.
You might
So
be absolutely right, yeah, because there were other references from Blade Saddles. I'm like, those are too hot for this movie, so I can't, that might be too
yeah,
much, yeah.
yeah. Make it an R-rated film. Yeah.
Exactly. Try to keep it PG-13, so.
Yeah, yeah. I think if Blazing Saddles got made today, you'd have the front and the opening credits, and then the end.
Oh, yeah, it'd be a 5-minute movie.
It would be, yeah. Brilliant film, though. Very, very good
Oh,
film.
yes.
Um, so following on from that last question, what's the most emotional or impactful moment for you during the making of the film?
Well, there were two. Day
Hmm.
4, we filmed at the hospital with Ari and Kylee, and as a director, you have to sometimes work with your actresses or actors in a certain way, and like you can't really micromanage them. You have to like let them know what you're expecting and get out of the
Hmm.
way. And that was what I wrote that scene in the hospital with Ari and Kylie. I wrote that knowing of Ari's experiences in her own life and her personal struggles with certain people that she had lost. And so I wrote that scene
Hmm.
for her, knowing that I knew that performance would come out of her. I knew it would come out of her when she has to scream for her child, who is not is going through this emotional and traumatic moment, and potentially dying. So like that was a very hard day, and I remember like the first take we did after lunch was a wide shot, and I wish I had it on a close up, but we just did it as a wide shot. And Ari just went to another dimension in that moment, and she screamed and fought for Kylie and tried to get back into the room. And I remember like when like the actors pulled her out of the room, she like went into this like crying fit, and I was like, oh my god, it was so hard to listen to. And I tried to like put my hand on her shoulder, but it was like I've never heard anybody scream like that in my life. It was so haunting, and I just felt,
Yeah.
oh, she was in it, and it was like, oh, it was so amazing to watch. And it's like it was a hard day because we spent like the entire day crying and just getting very emotional, and like Kylie's mom was crying the whole day, so it was like really hard to do that scene over and over again. But it's like
Mm.
it's such a it's the heart of the movie. It's when the movie turns. It's like it's when the emotional roller coaster really just goes down 100
Yeah.
miles an hour down that 300-foot hill. And then the other scene would be the last scene with Ashton and Ari in the jail. And
Mm.
like I kept them apart the entire day. I didn't let them see each other. Ashton got her makeup and came in. Ari had 8 hours of makeup to age, to be aged, and
Yeah.
by like 10 years or so, so she spent a lot of time in makeup. And I kept them apart. And so the first take is the first time they see each other the entire day. And they hadn't
Right.
seen each other in probably 3 months. So it was
Okay.
very emotional. And Ashton really just like the emotions just ran so deep. And like she told me later, like her hands went numb during one of the takes, like she just went to a
Wow.
different place, and she just really uh, went completely numb inside. And it's hard to watch those two back and forth, and I remember the first take, some of it felt a little too much. It felt a little too intense. Felt too like I'm like, well, I need to bring this down. So I remember sitting next to Carter, the DP, and by the camera, and I just like closed my eyes and I listened to their performances, and I was like, how can I bring them to a more stable take, because I feel like it's just too emotional. And I just
Hmm.
sat there, and for the last 2 minutes, I kind of listened to it and didn't even look at him. And like I was getting all teary eyed, and it was just like, when when actors or they go to another level, and
Hmm.
when the crew knows it too, because they don't always pay attention, they don't always, they kind of like, they're on their phone, whatever, they're
Yeah.
off, and whatever, and making little side comments. And when they're in it, they believe that, like, they just saw something great, because everybody was just like mouth dropped, and it's like, yeah, we have a pretty powerful scene here.
And it was, that's coming across from my side. It's nice to hear that you all felt that as well when you were actually making it. And I find that a lot with the films people I speak to, it's you do find that the more you get into the film, the more you get into, like you get the Hollywood blockbusters where they barely speak to each other, they barely see each other. But
Yeah.
on a proper feature film like this, I mean, I'm not going to say, I'm sure you love the Hollywood blockbusters as well. They're great films, but when you get more detailed, they're more into the story. I love this kind of film where because you can tell that the actors have really, they really are so much in the part, and like you say, the crew are also part of the film as you go along, and so it's always nice to hear that there's been that symbiosis between where everyone's just like, wow, and stops and just to admire what's going on.
Oh yeah, and like, some of my favorite moments on set is like, the DP is like an extension of me. It's like, I give him my vision, my shot list, and everything, and we talk about the scenes. And Carter, he did a hell of a job. And it's like, my favorite stuff is when, like, we're rolling and we're getting good stuff, and then you can see him smiling, you can and hear him laughing under his breath. That's when I know things are working. It's like
Yeah.
when the DP has to come over to me, and we have a little sidebar. I know something's not working, but like, for the
Hmm.
most part, like, seeing him always kind of smiling and just laughing, after a take, then I'm like, I know we got something good here. Things are working.
Definitely. I mean, that's your background as well, so you can see yourself. Can imagine, you know what he's looking for, and when he does that, because it's
Oh yeah.
you've done it yourself, you've been there yourself on that side of things. So,
Oh, indeed. I've been there a lot. So,
fantastic. What would you like audiences to take away from the film?
well, I really, I really want people to feel like they got an experience. Like, I feel like, it's a wonder. I just saw Oppenheimer again last week, and that movie is an experience. It's like,
Mm.
it's a journey. There's a lot happening. It takes you on all these emotional arcs, and it's done so well. And I feel like these days, studio movies don't always work out. Like, I think people care about the projects. I think people really want to make a great movie. I don't think everybody sets out
Yeah.
to make a terrible movie. But I know, like, studio execs are always pushing people to shorten the days, shorten the shooting time, and they don't care about one more take that's going to be better. They just want to, like, they want to come under budget. That's all they really care about. And it's
Hmm.
hard to, it's impossible to ever have a movie be good, because there's all these pressures, to make a movie fantastic, and, you know, whether it's casting or whatever. So I really want people with this movie to come in and have a journey and kind of go back in time with the 80s and feel like nostalgia, to feel like, wow, it feels like I'm watching an 80s movie with all these 80s actors,
Yeah.
with the music. And I want them to feel that way. And then I want them to feel like they went on this emotional roller coaster where they didn't know they were going to go down this path, where they thought, oh, it's a fun 80s movie. I didn't expect it to get this way and turn and be a kind of like a psychotic thriller with a lot of drama. I didn't. I still want them to kind of walk away and at the end just talk about the movie, because there's a lot of things that happen. And I always say to people, it's like, when we had the premiere a couple months ago, everybody kept talking about the movie for days and days, and they were all excited
Hmm.
about it. And a lot of the reasons why was because they never saw the ending coming. They didn't realize that was the ending. And like I told them, I said, it's about mental health. It's really about the decay of mental health. And I don't think that's something that we ever address in this world enough. It's like, sure, we have
Yeah.
homeless people, and sometimes you might give them $1 or buy them a sandwich, but like, there are so many people who are mentally ill in the world that just never get help. And it's like, I don't think we can help everybody, but I think this starting a dialogue because of our, people have their own mental health issues and people they
Hmm.
know. And I think that's something people need to really kind of like maybe talked about afterwards. And, and I think with this movie, it's a family film, so you can watch it with your kids and the parents can watch together. So I feel like that can open up some dialogues after, they watch it together.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's a good message to take away. And you're right. I think we need to talk more about mental health. Which there was one film a couple of years ago. Film short. Knew the director. They actually went to a film festival and they created an award after my show for him, which was like yay. in the UK. But it's called Don't Man Up. It was a lovely little film, and it was because you always say there's always that just man up and get over it. It was
Yeah.
mainly male mental health, but obviously it's there's
Mm-hmm.
Roswell Delirium handles everything
Thank you.
on that side of things. And before I wrap up, is there anything you'd like to say before to people who are watching or listening to the show?
Oh, I just want to say that I know everyone is very eagerly awaiting the release of this film. And, I want everyone to like, that they can just hang tight because we are working deals right now to have a streaming service show the film in the next couple of months. So things take a little bit of time, but be patient. But I think your patience will be paid off in the end. You'll be very happy with the end result when you get to finally see the film. So
Brilliant. And it's also on the Feb 24th. You're going back to the
yeah,
Chinese
we're
Theatre in
we're
Hollywood.
yeah, in 6 days we're going to be playing at the Chinese Theater 6, February 24th at 4 p.m. And then from there, I think we go to Mexico, Chicago, Phoenix, and then Barcelona. So,
World tour. Nice one.
yep.